And greetings and salutations, everyone. You've tuned in once again to On Air with Walt, and I am your host, Walt Lusk. And you can find us on every single podcast platform, including iHeartRadio. And, of course, we're live on YouTube and ubngo.com on Channel 1. And we'd love it if you'd go to YouTube and like, share, and even subscribe. It'd really help us out a lot. And it'd be great. We have a very different show today. We actually have a doctor in the house. About a month ago, I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Leyla Ali, and she is actually a doctor in pharmacology. But her perspective on pharmacy and pharmacology is very different, as we're going to see. And we'll learn a lot more about it. We see eye to eye, but I'm not going to admit it. So without further ado, welcome.
Thank you so much, Walt. I appreciate it. This will be a lot of fun here.
Yeah, well, it's actually a real studio with a real audience. You know, I mean, you know, they come in handy.
We need it. We'll take it. We'll take it.
Really big, as Ed Sullivan used to say, really big shoe, really big shoe. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the fun stuff. You actually are still doing. We were talking about before going on air. You actually do improv. So you're no stranger to microphones and performing.
Yeah, it's not improv. It's stand-up comedy. So stand-up, different than improv. Improv is like spontaneous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
stand-up comedy.
Stand-up is more planned, and yeah, I did that for the past few years. Haven't really jumped back in since the pandemic, but I'll be back out there. That's a lot of fun.
Well, I know all the venues are opening up now, and I've been to a couple shows since, so it's all good.
Yeah, we'll get there. It's got to be funny again, you know.
We could use a big laugh.
Yes.
So I thought I would start with one of the issues that's been very prevalent over the last couple of years, and it was even, I read that Dr., I got to say his name correctly, Fauci, has said that the pandemic is pretty much over, and of course masks are pretty much gone, even on airplanes and everything else. And you actually had a thing on YouTube. It was called Anti-Mask Hate Training 101.
Yeah, I mean, you literally see how they tell you how to think on TV, right? So
yes, they do.
I don't know. I forgot who it was, but it was one, a city official saying people that don't wear masks, they don't care about you, they're horrible, just whatever. And then you see the people where they're fighting in the stores saying the exact same thing. So they're training people.
And then you see the people that are telling you to wear the masks, they don't wear the mask.
You mean the ones that
politicians?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's hilarious that you are not wearing your mask and the other person is, and as a result, they think they're going to die because you're not wearing a mask, even though they aren't. I'm even going to say it; they aren't even effective.
Yeah, I know. And the nose is hanging out, and then people are walking down the street in a sunny day wearing a mask, and it's just like, please stop, please don't. I mean, you're supposed to say everybody has their own opinion, but it's like, come on, guys, it's outside.
The camera's right there.
Okay.
There you go.
Gotcha.
I can see it here. Yeah. So, and it basically the size of the virus is like 1 micron, and the average mask is anything less than 100 microns will go through, and all it is basically is a germ diaper. But what do I know? So.
I mean, I agree. It's like. But still, people wear them even if you don't have to. So.
Now you've written 2 books.
Yes.
And I know you've got one on the way. So, and one of your books is, well, it was supposed to be on the board. I don't know where it went. I'll just flash it. Off Balance: The American Way of Health, a pharmacist's perspective on why drugs do not work. And you can buy it anywhere and everywhere you can. I'll see if I find the logo. Yes. So tell me what prompted you to write the book?
I had a couple epiphanies in pharmacy school. First of all, I started off, growing up, my father was a medical doctor, and I always felt safe knowing that we had access to drugs. There was always something in our closet when someone was sick or they, needed us or needed something. And so my father and my mother always go there, and there's always be something to help us. So when I went to pharmacy school, I wanted to continue having access, plus even better knowledge. But when I got there, I was a little disappointed. It wasn't what I thought. And one epiphany was we were learning about rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
And that's when you have chronic swelling in the joints. And people take, the standard therapy is you take an anti-inflammatory, which reduces swelling, but it doesn't, treat the cause of it. And then after that, they'll give you a stronger medication, a second line, which has more side effects, and it's, it works better, but it has more side effects. But now you're on 2 different medications with 2 different side effect profiles. And after that, then they'll start suppressing the immune system. And I'm like, wow, I don't feel safe knowing, because it was running in my family. My mom and my aunt and her brother all had knee replacements. And I'm like, well, I probably should figure this out. But once I figured out what was going on, I didn't feel safe knowing that I had access to this drugs. I mean, there has to be something else. And then after pharmacy school, I had a second epiphany. Everybody's talking about cleansing, and that was a huge thing. Cleanse the toxins. And
Detoxing, you mean?
Yeah, detoxing.
Detoxing and cleansing. Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't know anything about that. In pharmacy school, we learned nothing about cleansing. So
you're just talking about taking drugs.
Yeah, we give you stuff to cleanse out, right?
Yeah, because of the drugs, you need to cleanse yourself. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I asked a friend of mine to bring me over to get me a cleanse. He brought me over a cleanse and a couple books, and I started reading these books. And it had things I'd never heard before. It was things I was fascinated. It said 95% of diseases are caused by what we eat. And so, well, that can't be true. Here we are. We're, I'm a doctor. I have a doctor title in the healthcare profession. Yep. So if that was true, somebody would have told me about that, right? I would have heard about it, So at that point, I pulled out my therapeutics book, and it's like 1,600 pages. It has all the disease states and different conditions and the regular treatments. And so I pulled out some simple things like acne, say.
Acne, okay.
The causes are multifactorial and not completely understood.
Covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, exactly. Rheumatoid arthritis, same thing. They didn't know. Acid reflux, that has to be food, right? It said a complex balance of defense mechanisms and aggressive factors. Nothing about food. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Just a bunch of jibber jabber that we just had to, learn over and over. And after that point, I was kind of angry and upset. I mean, I spent all this time and energy and money to be a healthcare practitioner in these basics of health that I didn't know. And so that's when I kind of went on started learning about holistic health. I had a medical anthropology class in college that I went back to. And then I started holding a monthly mixer in Long Beach.
Oh, wow.
And we would have 3 different holistic practitioners. I just reach out to them, and they would come and give 10-minute sessions. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I got to meet a lot of people, and that's where the people in my book would show up. People that healed themselves from conditions that doctors couldn't treat. And the people that showed up are amazing. I mean, they overcame cancer and neuropathy, and they, pain, chronic pain. They suffered for years with chronic pain, and only when they went holistic. Also, chronic fatigue. There's a girl. The doctor actually told her. She said she was always healthy and a family doctor for years, and she couldn't get up. She'd sleep for 12 hours, still feel terrible. And the doctor, she did her research and she said, "Oh, I think I have chronic fatigue." And the doctor laughed at her, and he said, "Yeah, I have it too."
Yeah, because he's probably working 20 hours a day.
Yeah, right. I mean, doctors don't look healthy, but
no. The joke is, and I learned this a long time ago. Doctors go to med school, right? Mm-hmm. And they have a boatload of debt. They pay off all their debt by about age 60, and they poop out and die about age 65.
Well, if they pay all their debt, they're ahead of me. So that. But yeah, it's so bad, the debt too. You're just like stuck in this, hole. But
yeah. Yes.
Anyway, so she never went back. She went to a naturopath, and she learned how to cleanse and heal herself, and now she helps other people. She's a.
Well, one of the bylines of the book is that it includes interviews with individuals, you've said, who have healed themselves from various health conditions that their doctors could not treat, including chronic pain, neuropathy, chronic fatigue, addictions, and cancer. And we're going to address cancer in a separate book.
Yes.
And that's just absolutely, it's nuts that they think the MDs. My father was a physician, and he actually was a holistic physician. in a very major hospital here in Southern California, and he was even prescribing cannabis to his cancer patients in the 70s because he figured out that if they're in a bunch of pain and they're going to die anyway, why not be comfortable? And so he was prescribing cannabis years before it was even kosher. So that's
ahead of his time.
He was very ahead of his time. He revolutionized actually the entire hospital.
Oh, that's awesome.
But so he was an MD. Some people call MD medical deity. I had one friend that was she was an office manager of a pediatrician, and she says, "Forget that. He's master of disaster."
Yeah. And PhD piled higher and deeper, right? Yeah.
Piled higher and deeper. But it's funny. I had when I was married, I had a brother-in-law who got a PhD, and his wife got a degree in PhD, putting hubby through.
So she's in debt too. Great.
Exactly. So, I mean, we and I know we're touching on this, but I'll expand on it. So, you talk about the power of the mind. Our mind and our thoughts can make us sicker, or it can be empowering and help us heal.
You know, if you listen to the language that they use for diabetics or cancer, when they say when you go to chemotherapy and you get done with it, they say, "Oh, now you're in remission." They're setting the tone that don't expect it to be forever, right? Because they don't know what causes it. And same with diabetes. You have people saying, when you're diabetic, you're just off balance, right? You have too much sugar in your bloodstream. Then you start having people saying, "I am diabetic," right? And you listen to the language, it's very disempowering. It's like all of a sudden when you say "I am," you're putting yourself more in. You know what I'm talking about, right? When you put yourself more into that, and you're making it worse for yourself,
Well, you have a medical condition, and now you are the medical condition.
Now you are the medical condition.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and a lot of these meds too, even diabetes, but one that's really easy to explain is the acid reflux when I do talks, because when you have acid, you have too much acid in your stomach, right? And why do you have too much acid in your stomach? Your body's always working to create balance. If there's a reason, like these symptoms that are uncomfortable. Another example, before we'll get back to that real quick, but if you're too hot, you sweat.
Yes.
If you're too cold, you shiver.
Yes.
So your body has to maintain a temperature. Now, if the drug companies would come and give you a drug for that, they would give you a drug to help you stop shivering. Like, okay, great, that's much more comfortable, right? I mean,
as opposed to just getting a blanket or a jacket.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you're shivering. That is uncomfortable. That's good to say. And same with acid reflux, right? Here you have acid trying to break down your food. You get it when you eat big meals, different times. Some people when they sleep. And when they do, they suppress the acid. They suppress the body's attempt to digest. And so what's going to happen with all these foods that's not being digested? Now people have even more problems, right? You got these clumps of food going through your stomach, and how are they going to break down? So when I do talks about that, I'll tell people, for acid reflux, you could just chew your food. And you just chew it slowly, like 30 times. And that's enough to make it a liquid, and that's a lot less work on your stomach, right? I mean,
well, doesn't saliva have a impact on digestion as well?
Yeah, it does. When you start tasting the food, the saliva and enzymes come out too. So, eat slow, you're right, more enzymes. And, also probiotics, to give you the normal flora in there. And
to balance things out. And
digestive enzymes to help break it down. And, just the simple things, they'll have some people where they'll eat certain things at a certain time. But if you eat slowly and you let the food digest, then the stomach can do its job. If you're overwhelming it, and then the acid comes to help you out, and then you stop the acid, you're going to have more problems,
yes.
right?
Right, it counteracts it.
It's insane.
And my understanding is if you chew your food more, then your brain tells you are fuller faster. That's my understanding.
Yes.
Therefore, you ultimately eat less food. Not only does that help your stomach and all those issues, but you don't gain as much weight.
That's right, because you're still eating and you try to beat the signal, right, to get it all in. Yes, I agree.
Thank you, doctor. Now let's touch on diabetes. What's your perspective on, insulin is now radically expensive since we have a new president in for a while.
Yes.
What's your suggestions on counteracting or addressing that?
So diabetes, they say it costs the average $13,000 a year.
Yeah.
And people that have diabetes,
That's a lot.
you take the meds, and you're suppressing the symptoms. You're not going to get any better. So slowly over time, you still have the heart problems, the circulation problems, the amputations.
Oh, yeah.
And so you can actually reverse it in a couple of weeks. And here's what happened when you think
A couple of weeks.
a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Okay.
You can reverse it in a lot of time.
Go for it.
Okay, you're like, I don't believe it. So what's the symptoms of diabetes? Is it first symptoms that people know? Do you know what they are? It's
I don't.
thirst. They get really thirsty.
Okay.
And they have to pee a lot, right?
Okay. Well, if they drink a lot of water, they're going to pee more, right? If they're drinking more water or liquid, they're going to. Okay.
Yeah, but here's what's behind it. Because if you're drinking water and it's not going where it needs to go, then that's part of the problem. So I'm just going to make it really basic here. So you eat food and your stomach breaks it down, and then takes the glucose, gets absorbed into the bloodstream. The bloodstream is a superhighway, and it delivers the glucose and the energy to all the cells, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so when they're at the cells, then the glucose is made into energy. Okay, so you only need so much glucose. I mean, if you're not using it up as energy, then you don't need that much, right? So at some point, if you're not exercising a lot or whatever, you're going to have too much. And then you have insulin resistance. Because the type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset.
Yes, I remember that.
And now it's like, no, kids are getting it now too. It's because we just eat
man.
tons of food. We eat tons of food. So now you have too much sugar. You're not using it to exercise. You're not using it, so it's just there. And then they call that insulin resistance, right? It's like, well, at that point, it's not insulin resistance. It's like you don't need any more sugar in the cells. So they're just saying, like, no, thank you.
Right.
So what do they do with the drugs? They give you insulin to kind of shove it in there, right? They give you these different drugs to kind of empty, because they'll test the bloodstream for the level of sugar in it, right? And that's what, but those drugs are going to either shove it here, shove it there, whatever. But the point is you need less, okay? And so here's how you can see it for yourself. There's a documentary called Simply Raw, and they take 6 diabetics, and they go and they just eat raw food for 30 days. And that raw food's not easy, right? I mean, everybody wants to eat more, but you can see even the one that was the most resistant, she took a little bit longer time, but they all became normal. They all got their blood sugar much more healing. And that's not easy, but a second way is Jason Fung. And have you heard of him? He teaches intermittent fasting.
Yes, I know that I do it. Intermittent fasting is really coming more of age, I think.
It
for
really
for a
is.
lot of ways, a lot of reasons.
And he got slammed on it, and I hear
Of course he did.
Of course he did, right?
Oh, man. So address that.
So he says that whenever you eat something, you get insulin. The insulin has to put the sugar in the cells, right? And so whenever you eat, you have an insulin rush, and whenever you have an insulin rush is when you gain weight. And so the only way to not gain weight and to have the insulin rush is to not eat. And so once people are diabetic and they're taking that extra insulin, then you're going to gain weight. Then you're in the cycle. It's kind of the downhill spiral right there. But, so that's basically like his thing is to go eat 8 hours during the day and not eat for 16 hours.
Okay.
And by that, the insulin levels go down. Everything goes down. And, one of my friends was running at 200, 300, and he was just eating in a small window, and he'd been diabetic for years and all the meds and stuff. And it was going, he didn't have it perfect because it'd been a long time, but that's that and some raw food, and you don't have to go down that downward spiral. You just balance out those two things for a lot of people. I mean, again, the longer you've been and the deeper you are down that
the more challenging it is to address it.
Exactly.
So you're saying that basically in a perfect world that folks should just eat raw food for 8 hours.
No, you don't. So if you do that,
and then don't eat.
Yeah, I mean, if you do raw food, you can eat, 12, 16 hours. You know what I mean? But you can eat regular food in a small window if you do it his way. And again, it's all about balance. Everybody's going to be a little different, but it'll be better than you think, and it makes a bigger difference. Like, I didn't know till him that it was such a big deal not to have all the snacks all the time, because everybody's so used to having snacks all the time.
Well, I learned that it's better to eat 6 small meals than 3 large meals.
And he will totally rip on that. He's like, So he's awesome, And somebody told me about his book called Obesity Code. And I had it on my Amazon wish, I'll get that one day. And then my sister-in-law gave it to me for Christmas. I'm like, oh, are we doing that now, huh? We're going to get each other self-help books?
Well, it was on your list.
Yeah, I know. And I forgot, and then I read it. I knew it was a great book. So definitely.
So you got a lot out of it.
I got a lot out of that, yeah.
Okay. So, because I know after 14 or 16 hours, your body actually starts processing stuff internally as opposed to food, because they realize, oh, we're not getting any, so we got to do something else in relation to intermittent fasting.
Yeah, like using up the stores.
Yes, yes.
Ideally,
and so in that case, they would potentially reduce the need for insulin because there's no food to digest, so therefore the body is going to do different things.
Yes, exactly. I mean,
okay.
So you keep the insulin levels down, but yeah, I mean, that's what you said it, right? So,
I'm just making sure that's the inference.
Yeah, so the insulin levels are down. If you're not eating, your insulin levels down, and then you lose weight, and yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so no more Snickers bars, folks.
Well, only in the 8-hour window.
But you can eat a Snickers bar in the 8-hour window with M&Ms.
I mean, honestly,
and Reese's peanut butter cups.
Honestly, if you're balanced, you probably can. It just depends. You know what I'm saying? Because when you say no, you can't have anything that you like ever again, that causes people anxiety. You're like,
yeah, people are freaking out.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right.
Like, I don't want to hear that either.
Well, and even in dieting, there's a cheat day.
Yeah, I guess now there is. And then it's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yes, it is a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
You mentioned that over the years you have seen many people's health slowly deteriorate over time as they took more and more medications. So as a pharmacist, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, you just see people want their meds, and it's like, well, you could do this and that, and it's like, but it's not covered, I mean, one guy in my book, he healed himself from hypnotherapy. But the fact is that a big problem is a lot of these alternative therapies, they're not covered,
Yes.
You have to pay cash for them. And I learned that I worked for United Health.
Okay.
Optum RX is a mail order pharmacy for them.
Okay. Yes, we talked about mail order. We can touch on that now or later.
Oh, okay. We could do it later.
Okay, well, we'll table that for a moment.
Okay, sure. Then now, go ahead.
We're talking about people taking more and more medications and they're not as healthy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I guess, there's that thing where you go to the doctor, and if you come out without a new med, then people are disappointed, or they think you want a med, I mean, last time I went, I had a problem swallowing. They gave me a pill for acid reflux, and I'm like, I don't have acid reflux, but thank you very much. But, they just feel like they have to give you something. So, and it's probably like 80% of the doctors who give you something, and 80% of the patients go in there and demand something, right? I mean, it's just this spiral, and then it has to be covered on insurance. So it's just a big game. It's like,
well, it's like they want a magic pill, right? I have a problem. Give me a pill. Make me just take a pill. I don't have to do anything to change my lifestyle or the way I eat or anything. Just pop a pill and I'll be better.
But see, it's not just the patients, because if you just want a lifestyle thing too, the doctors and pharmacists really aren't trained on that.
Yes.
And insurance doesn't cover that stuff. So it's a whole system that's just ridiculous now. Oh, and then of course there's the pharmaceutical commercials that tell you that's the answer to all your hopes and dreams.
Yes, I don't watch much television, but I watch some of these advertisements for all these different types of drugs, and of course they have to list the side effects. And it just cracks me up. I'm thinking, okay, I take this pill, but suicidal thoughts is a side effect.
Right.
I'm wondering, is that really better than having the condition?
Well, and then you know how they mumble through them, right? I mean, they just say them so fast, and they show images of happiness and stuff.
Yes, they do.
So I was thinking we should make a commercial where you have to actually show them. Like, that would be great, right? If you showed all the side effects happening, you showed low liver failure and the families around the patient in the hospital while it's happening. You know what I mean? Like, let's make them show it, because they know what they're doing, right? They mumble it through and they show happy pictures. The subconscious mind gets the happy pictures. The tone isn't something that makes you want to listen to it, so. But we could, I'll do that project one day. I'm going to make commercials where they show it.
Well, yeah, and anal leakage is mentioned periodically.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, the liver is always mentioned. Like, you're taking all this medications, and then, okay, if one medication is going to hit your liver, and we're going to touch about that in a second. and now you're taking more than one, and that even impacts livers more. You were talking earlier before we did about the fact that, each individual medication has been tested, but the combination of medications that people take, whatever their condition or conditions are, and now they're taking multiple medications. There's been no trials on if you take medication A, B, and C, what ultimately with them combined is going to do to your body.
Right. And not only that, but it's the drug companies themselves that make money from it that are doing the studies. So, and I've read books where they're talking about, like, they have studies that show the opposite effect, so they just bury them. They never come to light. So, it's like, well, a drug company does the study means absolutely nothing, it's just, and then, one drug versus, 4 drugs, nobody knows. And if the drug company that does a study has them, then they'll bury them. There's a lot of ways to
they're the profitability. And I think what's frustrating, and it's becoming more prevalent as we last the last couple of years, is since 1986, pharmaceutical companies in the United States are unable to be sued
for the vaccines.
Anything, any drug. Ronald Reagan signed that in 1986.
Yeah, I know about the vaccines. I know there's a guy in my book. He got disabled from an antibiotic called Cipro, which is still used all the time today. He read he's an engineer, so he actually read the package insert, so he could and he asked the doctor, and he said, "Don't read the package inserts." I mean,
there's advice for you.
Yes,
it's in there for a reason.
So he took it. Now it has a black box warning. And I think he got tendinitis and neuropathy. But if there's a black box warning and you get that side effects, it's like, well, you've been warned. So
now, what is a black box warning?
Okay, black box warning is when they find enough problems that they put.
Oh, so enough people have had this challenge or side effect from this medication that they actually have to make it a little more prevalent.
They make it a little more prevalent.
Okay, I mean, more people. Try to make people aware of it. Okay.
Yeah, and it'd be the last thing before it gets pulled off the market, or But there's a lot of drugs, like the statins have a black box warning. But in his case, he wasn't able to sue if it was already warned against. But I don't think neuropathy was in the thing. So there's neuropathy and tendinitis. And there's a lot of people that have been disabled from this antibiotic that's still used all the time today. And eventually it'll be pulled off the market, but I don't know when. I mean, it's, pretty terrible. But.
Well, and you talk about on your website that you've learned that people often seek the latest and greatest new drug on the market. But the truth is, the new drugs, more often, as you said, more often than not, are profit over health. And they are not the solution patients hope for to be. Our medical system needs to return to the forgotten basics of health, including body, mind, spirit, thoughts, and emotions.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. So stupid. All right. So drugs, drugs are herbs or whatever that are modified in a lab, right? Let's talk about emotions for a second, right? Because if you have a difficult emotion, what do? You go to the doctor. They give you some Prozac, right? I mean, there's meds for emotions, but emotions are there for a purpose. And so there's a couple schools of thoughts that I really learned about emotions. And Louise Hay is one. You Can Heal Your Life. Are you familiar?
Yeah, I've heard of, yes.
So every health condition has an emotion behind it that hasn't been resolved, and that's from an ingrown toenail all the way to cancer to heart disease to osteoporosis. That one says that you're not feeling supported, in the bone. So and Parkinson's, the body shaking.
Parkinson's is becoming more prevalent. Yeah,
and so that the one behind that is someone that wants to control everyone and everything. And it's like when you tell that to people, it's like, well, I mean, Muhammad Ali, right? And so that's the issue that has to be resolved with it. So there's reasons behind that. I mean, something doesn't develop. And there's another one that's really interesting, that probably the best book I ever read about health that put everything together, body, mind, and thoughts, and it's called Biodecoding. And in that, there's a medical doctor from the 70s. His name was Dr. Terrence Hammer. And he was helping patients, and he had a son that got shot from an accidental gunshot wound. And he was, it was, of course, devastating. His only son. Mm-hmm. And after that, he got testicular cancer.
Oh, wow.
And so he had been healthy all his life, so he had a hunch that it was caused by the gunshot wound, by the trauma,
Okay.
So after that, he started asking his patients, he said, have you had some trauma that you couldn't handle before the onset of your illness? And he asked like 1,000 patients, and all of them said yes.
That'd be a good question.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And then he got a CT scan,
CAT scan.
to look at their brain, and he saw these rings in the brain after the trauma. So someone have a trauma is something that throws them off, something that they can't handle themselves, and it would put rings in the brain. So these little rings, and from the place in the brain, they could tell what organ was going to be affected by the disease.
Oh, wow.
Is that fascinating, right? And so not only was it the trauma that happened, it's how you interpret the trauma.
Yes, and how you deal with it, how you address it, how you interpret it.
Yeah.
And an event that I have, or you have the same event, I might not think it's traumatic, but you do, so therefore we're going to react differently to that event.
Exactly. You nailed it right there. So the example that they had a lot of examples. The one I remember is ovarian cancer.
Okay.
Right? So ovaries are to reproduce, to have kids. So a lot of times women say the kids leave the nest, or someone breaks up with you and you're planning to have a family with them, women will get ovarian cancer.
Oh.
So one family, the kids leave the nest, and the mom's like, yes, finally they're gone. I can do what I want, right? The other one's sad. They don't have a purpose in life. And again, that's setting them up. So they have to think about the event in a different way. So it's not. So you give meaning to what you said.
Perspective.
Yeah, perspective, and giving meaning to the things that happen in a positive way. Because everybody has something that happens to them, but, we have a choice on how to give it meaning, right?
Yes. Now, my understanding on statins, for example, the cholesterol is, everybody's on these things, and my understanding is the brain needs cholesterol to function, and if they're taking these anti-cholesterol drugs, it's going to pull the cholesterol out of our brain. Therefore, there's higher onset of Alzheimer's. I mean, that's what I think.
I think I've heard things like that, and I've also heard about the muscle wasting and aches and pains that you get with it, and that they're just a total scam drug, It's just a waste of time. I mean, my mom went to an acupuncturist, and the guy in my book, actually, Dr. Dennis Kinane, first thing he did was take her off the statin, get her some natural things to lower it if it has to be lowered, But they also, I think they make the levels lower than you really need to, so they can put you on drugs.
Oh, so they're setting it up so you need it.
Exactly.
Oh, your cholesterol's at 200, and that's, anything above that's bad, but in reality, it's probably a higher number. For example,
possibly,
possibly, kind of, sort of, maybe.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay. So yeah, it's very interesting because obviously the profits of the pharmaceutical industry is ginormous.
Yeah.
Worldwide, right? You pop a pill and get better, and then you have a problem, and you have another side effect, so you get another pill, and away you go, right?
Yeah, and you look at the WHO and the Diabetes Association, American Diabetes Association,
diabetic,
and the CDC. They're all the same people. They all have the same language, the same results. They're all just different big organizations that give you the same BS message. That's it.
Well, from my research, the FDA, for example, the Federal Drug Administration, a majority of the people that are running it actually came from a specific company called Pfizer.
Mm.
And so therefore, when Pfizer comes out with anything new, automatically it's going to be approved. I've called the CDC the Center for Disease Creation, the Center for Disease Confusion, but don't ask me.
I heard that too, that it's like a big family. They'll go from FDA to CDC to pharmaceutical heads, and
there actually, bringing up a point, there's on Hulu, for those of you who have Hulu, there is a series called, sort of a docudrama with Michael Keaton in it. It's called Dope Sick. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
It basically is a story of Purdue Pharmaceuticals who basically developed this little drug called OxyContin, and how they played games with the fact that it wasn't addictive, and that if you had problems, you probably need more and not less, and what happens. It was very, very interesting. It was in a dramatic way on the shenanigans that went on with the FDA and how they played games with the statistics, and how they created a whole industry, and now, of course, we have a lot of people that have challenges with it, and others is similar. Yeah, it's called Dope Sick, and it's actually on Hulu right now, and it was actually produced and starred Michael Keaton. So if you're interested in that regard, it's worth checking out. Now, you also wrote a book on cancer. I love the title. The so you've been diagnosed with cancer and now you're in a panic.
Handbook.
Well, yes, it is a handbook. Lots of big pictures and not very big words and stuff like that. So what prompted you to address that?
Well, I mean, you know how it is when someone, and cancer is, again, a huge scam, right?
Big C word.
Yeah, the big C word, just ridiculous. But, people are so scared to get the diagnosis because they get thrown on chemotherapy and stuff. And so a lot of times like when I went for my throat, they just basically looked for a lump. And when there's no lump, they didn't know what else to do, right? So, you just really have to go holistic on this stuff.
Well, let me interrupt you. I learned this from my father, who's an internist. He basically said that they start with the worst diagnosis. Well, you have cancer. And now they're going to go through the rigmarole of making sure that you don't have cancer. But in the meantime, you think you have cancer.
You have all
right?
that fear and focus
and therefore they're like heroes. Well, we just found out after all these tests that you don't have cancer. Oh my gosh, okay, I feel better. But yeah, they start with the worst and then they go down from there, if you will.
Yeah, they always plant that seed that
Yes.
you might have cancer,
Yes.
right? And if you do, of course you're scared because all they offer is chemotherapy and radiation.
Yes.
But you don't need all those. There's other things you can do for it,
I totally agree. I have two guys I've met in my gallivantings, and they both had stage 4 prostate cancer. One of them had food poisoning, and he just, he was just feeling awful, and he went to the hospital, got a full workup. He was in his mid-40s, and they addressed, of course, his food poisoning, but they found out that he had stage 4 prostate cancer, and he said, forget that. And he went home, and he basically juiced. And he ate this big concoction of a juice every morning. And within, 6 or 8 months, he was totally negative on cancer.
That's
on
it.
Prostate cancer. And another guy got prostate cancer, and he still rides a bike like 200 miles a week on his bike. His PSA is like 200. They can't figure out why it's so high. It's off the charts. Normal's like 8 or something.
Oh, okay.
And but aside from that, he's totally clear. And he did the same thing. He just juiced, and it wasn't anything fancy. He just goes to the grocery store and has a juicer and just vegetables and fruits. And both of these guys beat prostate cancer.
I think juices is great. I would add too if there's any emotional stuff, because if people don't handle or deal with emotional resentments and angers and things like that, then it could come, because there's people that do everything right and it comes back and they're like, what else do I need to learn? So I think that's a big one.
Yeah, some of the chapters in the book are Western medicine versus holistic approach. I've tried everything. You do address emotions in chapter 6. Nutrition and detoxification, we've talked about a little bit. And then cancer is your gift. That's how you close the book.
Yeah. Because I learned a lot of this from Optum Health Institute in San Diego. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard of them, but I'm not familiar with them.
Optimum Health Institute, and they're in Lemon Grove, San Diego. And you go for a week. You eat raw food. You do wheatgrass. You do cleansing. You just basically cleansing, and they have body, mind, spirit classes. And they'll do exercises that actually clear your lymphatic system, like all the cancer. Another thing, like when someone has cancer and they take out your lymph nodes, it's like that's how the cancer gets out of your body, and then they remove. So anyway, this helps clean everything out of the lymph nodes and everything. So they have a whole week-long program there, and there's 3 sets of classes, 3 weeks of classes. But I saw a guy there, he had prostate cancer that spread to his bone, and he could barely walk, and he was with a caregiver, and she's like, he's not doing very well. By the end of the week, he was like by the end of 1 week, he was a different person, walking and eating and just super healthy. And there's a lot of people that go there. Another guy told me, he goes, yeah, my doctor told me I have 3 months to live. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He's like, that was 12 years ago. So that is where you go to heal. You go to a place like that. It goes to the back of the basics. And they actually, a lot of the stuff I learned about emotions was from them. Emotions aren't meant to be pushed away, right? We need to express our emotions. We need to allow ourselves to feel them. They have feel them, and then you identify what emotion, and then you want to express it. You could write, you could do something physical, but it's meant to be expressed and let go. and release. And a lot of people are just pushing them away all the time. And
Right.
and
We are emotional creatures.
we are emotional
Yes,
creatures.
we are.
It's normal, and
Yes.
we have no classes on how to handle them, right?
No,
we just
we
see
don't.
dysfunctional parents, how they handle it, right? And that's all we get. So, and there's another therapy called somatic experiencing that's a girl in my book healed herself with, and she was addicted to all kinds of things. And what they teach you there is to just let your emotions feel in your body. So instead of like you feel an emotion, you drink, you eat, you do whatever, right? You just sit with it. How does it feel? I feel it in my stomach. It's kind of burning. It's twisting, And then you let it go and you let it feel through your body. So it's just this awareness of emotions in your body. And our world would be a totally different place if that was a thing that people learned. I mean, she was able to heal with that method.
Wow. So basically you're accepting your emotions. You're actually embracing it,
Yeah,
and
you're
whatever
like,
it is.
come on in, come on in. Let's see what you got. So,
And then just let it flow, kind
and
of.
it flows through.
and work through.
Emotions, they are energy and motion. It'll flow through you. It'll keep
energy
going.
and motion.
It's like, come on in, but keep going.
One thing I learned a long time ago is that there are really only two rules to life. The first rule is you don't sweat the small stuff, right? Life's too short. It's not worth it. It's just, it's just not even worried. You don't have to worry about it. It's just small.
Right.
The second rule is it's all small stuff.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, but that makes sense because we all have our own little temper tantrums in some way or another if an event occurs, and we get a blown over proportions, or we're going to call everybody, and and it just kind of feels builds on itself, and then I call it we should on ourselves, SHOULD, but yes, that's very interesting that emotions, and again you've talked about a traumatic event,
Right.
which is an emotional event.
Yes.
Right? And if we internalize it, it could pose problems.
Right.
So you're saying that we should go to a counselor first.
Yeah, I learned how to express them, and I think that, a lot of times emotions get stuck in their body. There's also healers that can help release these stuck emotions. You ever see the therapies where someone's in there and there's a group sitting around them and they're screaming at their father or whoever, and they're crying, and then they go, "Wow, that was beautiful," and you're like, "I'm not doing that," I'll find a different way to let go of it, but I don't even know if that's healing. I mean, I guess it's good.
Well, it is. It's called Gestalt therapy. My ex-wife was a psychologist.
Okay.
And they have like little paddle, little things you put on. You can pound pillows and pound things, and you actually are physically just trying to get it out or deal with it. And
there's when you can't remember what it was too. But go ahead.
Right, and so therefore you're just trying to get it out and just address it and admit it and again work through it.
Right.
I don't know about remembering.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's your
remember.
wife. Okay.
Now, I know you're working on another book, which is like Preview of Coming Attractions somewhere this century, but I thought it was very interesting, and what you're addressing is pharmaceutical mail order.
Right.
Which I love what you said in here. It's like a dream come true. This is what happens to our healthcare system has evolved into. But in reality, is it really best for our health? It also means less human time, less time with doctors, less information about nutrition, less natural products, and more patient with chronic illness on long-term medications. Again, they want to, we don't want to go see anybody or instantly, I'll just order it through the mail and, continue to take this pill and hopefully it'll work.
Yeah, it's really bad, because I worked at Optum RX for close to 5 years, and I took patient phone calls, and they have yeah. So at first I checked prescriptions where you're just looking at what's written on two computers all day, like my eyes are bulging out of my head. They want you to do like 50 or 55 an hour, so everybody's just like timed.
Oh wow, that's fast.
It's really fast.
I mean, that's 1 minute or so per patient.
Yeah, patient, doctor, driver.
I mean, oh my goodness.
And it's just ridiculous the parameter. They use everybody very efficiently. And then people that are the fastest, they get the bonuses. And so with the calls, we have time. So we have like a customer service advocate answers the phone, but then they would pass to the pharmacist, and we're supposed to answer just pharmacist questions.
Right.
we had, I think it was 240 seconds that they, or something like that, an average. And sometimes they're easy questions, you know. And it's
Well,
like,
sure, but yeah, but most of them aren't.
yeah, and then you don't want to go. Is there anything else? No, you don't do that because everyone's your average.
Yeah, up, time's up. Call back.
Exactly. And one time I had a problem with my phone where I had it on mute or something. And they couldn't hear me, so somebody called 3 times, and it was a really short call. And like that was really good for my average because it's all about average.
Oh, that's very funny.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just a game. It's just it's just pushing through them.
What's very interesting is I've been in the insurance business for a long time, and years ago, as a field underwriter, you'd ask the client, who's your doctor? Well, it's Dr. Brown. Okay, but they wouldn't tell you about Dr. Smith and Dr. Williams and Dr. Chen. And the insurance industry, we're talking life and health industry, they would figure out that the key of most physicians is prescriptions. And so they formed something called, which you're familiar with, called the Pharmax. So they keep track of every single prescription you've ever had, because if you take a prescription, it alludes to the fact that you have a certain condition. And therefore that your primary care physician may not be dealing with it, that you've told everybody about, but Dr. Chen is, and it's a different doctor that you just go see that you don't tell anybody about, but the common denominator is drugs. So, the drug industry and the whole thing regarding pharmaceuticals is a bigger deal for all of us than we think. And as an extreme example, I had a good friend of mine who called me up and asked me about this Pharmax thing. This was years ago. It turned out that they were asking about pain pills. And he says, well, I went to the dentist and I took a couple of pain pills once. Well, it turned out his wife, and it was a small town in the South, was going to 3 different doctors, going to 3 different pharmacies and filling his prescription for OxyContin.
Oh, no, he didn't know.
Yeah, he had no clue.
Wow.
And as a result, he got divorced and didn't get health insurance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So, this pharmaceutical situation that you're addressing is really, I believe, it's a chronic challenge, and it's getting worse. I mean, people go, well, take this vaccine, it's been blessed. No, the vaccine, folks, that's out now, that's very prevalent, it is still under an emergency use. And Pfizer even has a list of 1,200 side effects, and they can't even advertise it on the television, because if you watch the television advertisements for pharmaceuticals now, they have to list the side effects.
Right.
And if they did that, they would have spent 10 minutes listing the side effects and not even get to the benefit. That's my opinion.
But you saw how they're written out right in a big old blob, so nobody can read it. Just like they read them off, it's just like that same thing where they make it as inconvenient as possible for you to read it.
Well, it's on very thin toilet paper in microfiche print.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, there you go. So tricky, huh?
Yes, it is very, and it is. It's a money grab.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting that we've all been trained and programmed that if we have a problem, go see a medical doctor and pop a pill. But,
Yes.
It's not really addressing, as you've talked about, the emotions and other issues that are or a traumatic event that might have caused the challenge in the first place.
They had that on Sesame Street, where they would have a kid with ear infection go to the doctor.
Okay.
And, I mean, indoctrination way back then, so.
Well, they got to train us early.
Exactly.
So in the last couple minutes that we've got, it's been a fast hour.
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to add, subtract, multiply, or divide, or what we've missed, or something that's just on your mind that you're seeing a lot of these days?
And well, when you said that, I don't know if it's a final thought, but like one of the last times I went to the doctor, I went for I went for my throat, a hard time swallowing. She jammed this thing in my nose. I didn't even know it was going to happen. All of a sudden.
Oh, wow. That's a surprise.
Then I came up with an ear infection,
Oh, wow.
And so I went back, and she goes, oh, that's not my fault. That's not my fault.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, I haven't had an ear infection since I was a kid. Are you sure? And so she gives me a prescription. She gave me a prescription that's like a brand name drug. They take 2 generic drugs, and they combine them into one. Now it's a brand name.
Oh, really? Oh, there you go.
When I was there, I saw a pharmaceutical rep giving him lunch in there. And I'm like, why don't you just give me the generic? She goes, this works better. This works better. And I'm like, I know everything. I still got totally burned by this stupid doctor, I mean, here she is. She caused more damage. She didn't treat anything. Oh, and I said I feel like my mouth is dry a lot. I feel thirsty. She was like, "Well, let's check you for what that syndrome, Sjogren's, I think it's called." So she did a lab test for $800. I'm like,
There you go.
"Don't you
There
want to
you
know
go.
how much I drink a day? Wouldn't you ask me that first, or, before you do that?" So anyway, just a disaster. And that I'm like, okay, this is just to remind me not to go to doctors again. I don't go. There's acupuncture. I go to acupuncture. I go to anything else with a doctor. There's a lot of ways. And just, I guess the message is you can heal. You don't have to be sick and going to doctors all the time. So
Again, she's talking about holistic addressing of diabetes.
yes,
And I know of folks that have even done that as well with cancer. Not a cure-all or a be-all for everything, but there are real solid alternatives.
yes, I think that's a great message. Things that we're told they're incurable and you have to be long-term sick, they're not. There's ways to treat them.
Right. And this is from a doctor in pharmacology.
Doctor of pharmacy.
Yeah, doctor in pharmacy. She's got over a quarter of a century experience.
Oh my gosh. Is that right? Yes.
Well, you tell me.
Yes, no, I graduated in 98, but I was working in pharmacies for about 5 years before that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So we're in the realm of a quarter of a century.
Yeah, we're in there.
So how do folks, if they want to learn more or get your book or learn a little more about what you're doing, how do they get hold of you?
Well, you have the website up there. It's drleylaali.com. My contacts info in there. We're starting to do classes on Wednesday night to teach me and another lady who suffered with the healthcare system for over 20 years. So,
Now, you did mention a class you're doing, Intro to Health and Healing.
yes,
Yeah, it's a
Feel
weekly
better.
it's a weekly class,
right.
right? And you don't charge a whole lot for it.
Yeah, $10,
Yeah.
and we're just getting,
Yeah.
we're kind of building community down. We're in Orange County,
In
Fountain Valley.
In Fountain Valley, okay,
Yeah.
down in Orange County, okay.
Yeah.
And you can check that out. It's on our website.
Yes.
Is it on your website?
Well, soon. It's on Facebook, but
Oh, okay.
I'll get it on the website.
Okay, on your Facebook. So
Yeah.
your Facebook's Dr. Leyla Ali, ALI.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can find her there. And hey, really, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for being in studio.
Yes.
And
exciting.
this has been a very enlightening and entertaining and discussion.
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Doctor. So you've tuned into On Air with Walt. I'm your host, Walt Lusk, and you can find us on everywhere that podcasts are, including iHeartRadio. We broadcast live here at ubngo.com and also on YouTube. And it would be fabulous if you could like, share, and subscribe at On Air with Walt at YouTube. And you can find us there live every week. And, of course, the show will be back on YouTube pretty quickly. And we have another show next week. So stay tuned, and God bless.